truth. I ain't gonna lie to you. But also tonight is game 3. Last time I was here, my Astros played the World Series, and so I'm here again. And just like last time, I was gonna wear my jersey, but I wanted to be a little more formal. But I did wear the socks again this time. See, I had them last time. Y'all thought I was joking, so I got the Astros socks. So if you're a Braves fan, suck it up. We're gonna beat y'all. Don't worry about it. So it happens. All right, let's get right to it. I want to start with activism, but I want to define activism because, frankly, it's a whole bunch of people today who are calling a lot of folk activists, Alicia, who ain't no damn activists. Okay, if y'all can't handle the hard, uncomfortable conversation. Well, we keep it real, we keep it black, and that's why my show is called Unfiltered. Alicia, go ahead.
So what's the question? What is activism?
Oh, no, real act, because again, that title is thrown around so easily today that we label all kinds of folks activists who are not activists.
Well, I look at it in a certain way, and also, hi y'all. Thanks a lot for having us here. I make a distinction between activism and organizing. And I think you're right, we do use words interchangeably, and words do mean things. And that's important because it helps us understand what strategies people are using, what they're trying to accomplish, what they're impacting.
time and energy that is expended on this event, this speech, as opposed to how did that actually happen. You can talk about the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, but you have to actually pay attention to what did A. Philip Randolph and Bob Rushton do to actually get to the point of that particular day. How did they organize? How did they mobilize? Because that, to me, which I think goes to really where we are, is the focus on the celebrity. That the real issue that we've had, I think, for the past 30 or 40 years has been we have turned the leader into a well-known celebrity, and people have fallen in love with that aspect of movement, of so-called movement building. And what ends up happening is they benefit, they profit, they become well-known, and there really is nothing else. That, to me, I think has been one of our biggest mistakes, not studying how the movement was built. When I interviewed Dr. Jim Lawson, Nashville movement, he said they spent the first 3 months discussing why they were meeting. 3 whole months. The next 3 months, they spent talking about what they wanted to do. If we really want to be honest today, folks today are so smart that we will have a meeting, and within 2 hours, we will launch a social media account, a website. We've already planned an event, and you're sitting here going, are we going to talk about why we're doing this? That, to me, I think, is a mistake, not studying how they built it. And I think the reason they were successful, because they spent that level of time on the infrastructure, on the foundation.
You know, one of the interesting things about the ecosystem, how it collapsed, fragmented, has everything to do with the pace of the temptation of the bride. The pace of it. So when you take SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, as your case study, what it took, the period of time between them hopping on the networks of Miss Baker. Right. So Bob Moses goes to Macomb. The only reason why he's there is because Miss Baker has organized in some NAACP chapters in the South. MZ Moore is there, and a whole range of other folks are there.
But before you even get to that, though, remember, King and Y.T. Walker were already trying to co-opt SNCC when they were at Shaw University, and she stormed in and was like, oh, hell no, y'all ain't doing this.
You know, remember, she's the first executive secretary of the SCLC. She's organizing southern chapters of the NAACP in the South in the 40s. So when those students make their way to the South, they enter into her network.
Precisely.
And they connect with old school organizers. But to tell the story of SNCC from that moment to Marion Barry being being the mayor of Washington, D.C., and all the corruption that followed, that's a long period of time. But the pace between Ferguson, or the pace between the hashtag and Cosmopolitan magazine, or the pace between Ferguson and Ebony, or Essence, the cover of Essence, the temptation is so quick, and the choices that have to be made in the midst of the pace of the effort to co-opt and grab, and then diffuse, and then to pull out, and to lift up, and to celebrate is so radically different. And so I think that's really complicates what it means to be an organizer in this moment. And you know this.
But I'm going to push back on you, though. I don't think the pace is that much different. I totally get it with whole mass media, but I believe if you go back, King 55, Montgomery, he gets elevated, then all of a sudden 381 days that they go through, then all of a sudden he becomes a national star. The difference, Alicia, was he said, I can't make this just about me. The difference, I think, a lot of times is when you have individuals who then go, oh, it's me and not us. Look, I told you, I ain't got no problem saying stuff. See, y'all saw that smile on her face like, did he really go there? Did he really bring that up?
I mean, I sure did. So let me say, yes, I love this. I love this. I drink this up. And it reminds me for younger folks who are watching, that these issues that we're struggling with in our movement right now are not new.
Nope.
They didn't start with us. This isn't the first time these debates have arisen, and if we've been lucky enough to sit at the feet of folk who can tell us from multiple perspectives, because there is no one story of that period. And this is what I love about this dialogue that just happened here. There's a lot of different entry points, and all of those stories are actually deeply valid. And the same is true with this movement. There's no one story, there's no one entry point, there's no one voice that gets to tell the story, and people remind me of that all the time. But what I love about this conversation is it just illuminates, right, that all of those stories kind of combine to build something bigger. What I might offer to this conversation, just for our perspectives around platform, is yes, people have been given platform with no program. Platform is not the problem.
See, we were in court, they would say, sustained.
Platform is not the problem. We need to break through. We absolutely have to break through. I want more people on MSNBC. I do. I want more of our people on MSNBC, not to be talking heads, but to move an agenda. There's millions of people that don't know we exist. They don't know what we stand for. They don't know what we want. And so all they're getting is the information they get off of YouTube.
And I want more people who are at MSNBC who are not on the air, who are in power to put those people on the air.
I know. Exactly. There's a reason that they don't. Right? So I want to make that intervention, though, because I think there is also a way in which we share these stories of how activists and organizers need to be martyrs who are largely silent and irrelevant. And I don't believe in that. I want us to challenge that. I don't think that to be an authentic organizer, that you should never be on the news or on television or in front of crowds. And there are people who believe that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this, there is this dynamic tension, because on the one hand, people shun profile. You're not supposed to have it, and if you have it, you're not really about the work. But on the other hand, we want more people to get involved with what we're doing. And so how do you strike that balance? It's complicated.
I literally had a woman just send me a text a couple weeks ago. She's like, Tamika Mallory is not a real activist. I was like, wow. She said, because, I'm seeing these photos. She's at these events. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I said, first of all, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Y'all got to understand, I don't even sugarcoat nothing, even to my family. I said, 2, I've known her for more than 2 decades. I said, you can't even fully comprehend her level of activism. I said, but what you also need to understand, though, you mad because she was in a Cadillac commercial. I said, but you act as if when she's at a Jay-Z party, she's not interfacing with individuals who also help the movement. I said, because while you sitting here complaining about that, I said, did you have any understanding what Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier and Diane Carroll and Dick Gregory were doing? I said, so how are you sitting here now complaining? I said, you might want to step back and taste.
Well, this is the other piece.
And then she apologized.
Well, this is the other piece, right? Which is, we sometimes have more smoke for each other than we do our enemies. I've been in this conversation for a little while because that kind of stuff, even when said about me, used to really bother me. I was like, people should know my heart. You don't have to know my heart, just know my work. So, it's okay to have a different opinion about strategy. It's okay to move a different strategy. It's okay if doing a Cadillac commercial is not your thing. What I'm worried about is, does Tamika tell the truth when it matters? Is she going to sit up there with whatever power broker and not say something because she was in a Cadillac commercial? That's a problem.
That's the temptation.
That's the temptation. And some people do that. Because what they're here for is the platform, not the agenda, and not moving.
Yeah, they're here to be recognized at airports. They're here to be stopped on the streets.
And you know, I'm like, Lord. Okay. I was going to say something that wasn't nice. No. The Lord knows my heart. Okay.
The Lord knows I'm going to say it.
Well, I'm just not trying to start any unnecessary drama for
Ain't
my own self. That's not for you. That's for me.
starting none, just being honest.
But I'll also say this. I think we do have to have a conversation about what is the agenda, though. You know, like, what are we trying to move, really? And do we have a strategy? I think this piece that both of you brought up about the how and what are we trying to do with this is deeply important. And I was saying earlier this afternoon that BLM is not my first rodeo. I've been organizing and active since I was 12 years old. What is important to me, and what has been important to me for all that time, has been letting people know what the problem is, because I feel, and many of us feel, gaslit. People pretend there isn't a problem, or that we are the problem, right? And we're not the problem. Surprise, we're not the problem. But I also have felt deeply that that space for me right now is a little bit toxic. We do need to understand the problem. But understanding the problem is not what mobilizes people over the long term. It's what you're trying to build in its place that motivates and mobilizes people over the long term. And let me say, I get up in the morning not because I know there's problems in my community. I get up in the morning because I'm excited to build the thing that we're going to replace those problems with and to fight for that. That's why I do that. So I hope that that also becomes part of our infrastructure, that freedom dreaming, really investing in that.
Here's why I brought that up, Eddie, because it really ties directly into how BLM started. Verdict, George Zimmerman verdict, that night, I was in Washington, D.C. at the Delta Convention, and that thing went through the Verizon Center, and people were just shocked and stunned. There were people who gathered that night in front of the White House. Folks I knew that they said, Roland, you got to swing by. I did swing by. But then a bunch of us were on a call that night, probably about 200-300. The next night, there was a call that had about 2,000 people. People just wanted to talk. They wanted to just vent. They wanted to say something and do something. And what was interesting is after that, it's a whole group of some of the smartest people. If I started giving you names, you've seen these people, and they've created other stuff, and they were like, we got to do something. So we're on these calls, and we're sitting there. And, all right, we have a meeting. We have another meeting. We have another meeting. And they already planning stuff. I mean, this person, we can call this person, and going through this whole deal. And I'm on the call, and I'm like, what are we doing? I said, who we representing? Who we trying to reach? Then folks get mad. I don't know, I'm sick of these damn old heads been on the call. I'm going. So one person, sister, she calls Jeff Johnson. He don't need to be on these calls. And Jeff says, she's like, I don't like him because he's arrogant. And Jeff was like, and your point? He said, how many people on that call have a national television show? She said, one. He said, one. He said, how many people on that call on Tom Joyner Morning Show 4 days a week? One. She said, how many people on that call, if we needed to start this thing off with a $20,000 check, who could write it and not blink? He said, and that's the one person your ass don't want on the call? Angela Rye was leading the effort. I hit Angela. I said, Angela, I'm going to give this thing about 3 more weeks. Then it's going to be dead. She's like, Roland, you can't say that. I was like, watch it happen. And I walked her through it. 3 weeks later, it was dead. Because And I didn't even be lost until later, because we were having these conversations and they were already creating plans, and there literally was no foundation, who we represented, who we were speaking to, who we were speaking for. It was a whole bunch of action that could not sustain itself because we never asked the most basic fundamental question: why are we doing this? And I think we talk about where we are on a local level, state level, national level. That is the struggle that people are having, because they won't deal with that first before we want to immediately jump to the action stuff.
You know, I think this is really interesting, because I talked about this a bit earlier with some community activists here in Minneapolis, right? Oftentimes we run past the why, though, because we often think of ourselves in pre-political terms. That the why has already been answered by virtue of some assumed solidarity between us. Some event happens, some horrible thing happens in our communities. There's a presumption that we all have the same political orientation, because the person that has been harmed or the harm that has happened, it connects with all of us because we are black, and then we presume that because we're all black and that black person was just murdered or killed, that we all have the same interests, so we can fight together. And we just run past the actual political work that needs to be done, because answering the why will reveal different interests.
And motives.
And then because usually demobilization happens when those interests and motives evidence themselves. And people go, that's what you here for. Or, oh, I see why you here. And then boom, right? So I think part of what happens is that oftentimes we assume that there is a kind of black politics.
There are many black politics.
Exactly. And we don't do the work that's requisite to engage in the organizing, so that we can be clear about not only the why, but the how, and the ends that are in view. Because it could very well be the case, right? And I said this today. You and I could get together and we're fighting. We realize that we stand together clearly in relation to police reform. Police brutalizing our people, boom, boom, boom. And then as we're organizing and mobilizing to do what we need to do around police reform, something comes out of my mouth that reveals that I'm a transphobic dude. And so the solidarity that had been constituted in this moment in relation to that issue, right, can be easily dismantled at the very moment I have evidence in my organize a set of different commitments and values. So solidarities are made, they collapse, they have to be remade. But oftentimes in black politics, the adjective does more than the noun. The adjective is doing more than the noun. And what I mean by that in very clear terms is that we often are rendered pre-political. Our blackness is the politics. And people can pimp you in the name of blackness. People can do you in the name of blackness. They can have a deep class politics. They critiquing Reaganomics every single day, but they got to trickle down economics. And so all we need is more Robert Johnsons and Oprah Winfrey. Like,
You better come on.
where did you believe that?
Yes.
You critiquing trickle down economics over here, but over there you. So I'm saying that there's a certain presumption about our solidarity that often gets read simplistically as ideas of politics that we need to kind of complicate.
Well, we also, and when both of you speak to this, a grave mistake is that, to your point, if somebody says something, we have gotten to the point where, oh no, you're out. You got to go. You can't be seen, can't be heard. And again, I'm going to go back to the previous model. When other leaders went to King and said, you have got to get rid of Rustin, but also his name escaped me, who was his closest advisor, who helped write the March on Washington speech. They said he was a communist. King said, white gentleman. This escaped me right. Yes, yeah. I'm thinking just like you, same way like this here. It'll come to me in a second.
Somebody Google it.
But King
Jack something?
refused.
Jack,
I'm sorry, go ahead, bro.
is he the homie though?
Ain't no sense in trying to move on. Y'all go and try to figure it out, because
Jack.
the whole time y'all gonna be like,
Jack.
yeah, let me go ahead and do the I ain't turn mine off. Let me go ahead and fight, because you ain't gonna listen to a word I say. You gonna be sitting here like, what is
Jack Odell.
his name?
Jack Odell. There it is.
So, they're like, he gotta go. King said no.
Thank you.
King said no. He said no. And it wasn't until, and in fact, the advisor came to him and said, no, I got to step away because I can't hurt you further. What we don't do, at least I want you to speak to this, talk about, because Cleo Monago has this conversation all the time whenever you mention transphobic. He said, versus getting rid of somebody, we need to go to that brother or sister, then we can have a conversation to understand where they're coming from, why do they feel that way, what happened in their life that led them to that. He said, but if you immediately discard somebody, you actually could be discarding somebody who is really strong, because, and then what comes in, but we got funders and we got other people. It's amazing how folk are unwilling. They talk about having conversations, but they're unwilling to really have the internal conversation, where it's just easy to just get rid of someone, discard someone, because they're going to be a problem.
Well, I feel a lot of different ways about this. This is why this distinction between organizing and activism is important. Because in organizing, you are trying to bring people along with you.
It was Stanley Levinson.
Well, Jack Odell was
Yeah, both of them. They call both of them communists. Right.
Organizing is about bringing people with you and not leaving people behind. And so if your orientation is not that, then yeah, absolutely that is what will happen. We will leave people behind because we don't have the skill, the technical skill, the emotional skill to stay in it with people when we have conflict. Now, I came up in traditions where people did open letters and mind struggles. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's like polemics, right? People have a very clear vision of what their politic is, what they do, what they don't do, and why. And people would send letters back and forth talking about why you wasn't nothing. Right? And then it would go out over email. And then people would go, this is before Facebook. Now that we have Facebook, people can drag you, for years. But the thing that always came out of that, right? I mean, people they stopped talking to each other, and, it was all that. But a lot of people would be like, thin-skinned. I'm talking about your politic, not your person. You a good person. I just think you're wrong. And so let's hash it out and figure out where we can actually come to some agreement, and maybe we can. Can we still work together? Now, I hear people say that there's a cancel culture, and I don't see it. What I do see is a yearning to have the tools to resolve conflict and be okay with conflict. And one of the things that happens, I think, especially amongst progressives or people on the left, is that we've been taught to shy away from conflict. That conflict means that we are not deeply invested in our values because of that prefigured way, right, where we're all supposed to get along and think the same thing and do things the same way. And if we don't, then we can't rock with each other. I don't know if it's age or experience, but I was saying earlier today, like I'm in this position where I'm not young, I'm not in my 20s, not in my 30s. I still look pretty young. But I'm also not like in my 50s or 60s or 70s. So I'm in this middle position. And getting there, I've realized I can't do this with just one group of people. Like, I need all of it. I need all of the perspectives, all of the approaches, even the ones I don't agree with. What we're trying to build here in terms of a strategy to win, it's got to be like a mosaic, right? There are some things that don't belong in terms of what I'm trying to move forward, but there's a lot of things that do. And the more narrow we become in our who we rock with and who we don't, the more people we leave out, and the more room we give our enemy. Our enemy don't care about the fact that you like direct action and you're not comfortable with direct action. They're like, look, we trying to just take it all.
Right.
Period.
And they want to weaponize what it is that they disagree with.
And they want to weaponize our disagreements. And
Right.
so my thing is, if you got more smoke for people who are trying to do the same thing you're doing, even if they're not doing it the same way, then you have, for Donald Trump or Steve Bannon or Stephen Miller or, you know, any of the racists that run our cities, if you got more smoke for me than you got for them, we're not living right. That doesn't mean, though, that we shouldn't push each other. Now, there's a lot of conversations that I feel like we need to have around how we practice our values in our politics. Mm-hmm. And especially when it comes to, you know, queer folks in our communities and in our movements, like we're not good on that. We're not good on trans folks in our movement. And at the best, we'll say, well, everybody should be able to be here. That's a good step, but it's not the final step. Like actually, right, there is a unique and targeted war against particular peoples in our communities, and we have to stop saying that the only people who are queer or trans are white people. It's just not true. It's not true. It's not true. And I will tell you, in every single one of our families, we got people who've had a roommate for 20 years in a one-bedroom. We talk about them as the friend. We just got to start being more honest with each other. These are the kinds of struggles I feel like we need to have. However, if we don't agree, I'm going to keep working on you. And I hope you keep working on me. Because at the end of the day, I think we all need to be able to get there together.
See, Eddie, I go back to studying. I go back to looking at how people did certain things. If people actually study, again, not speeches, but if you go back and study interviews of King, he never, no matter what Malcolm X said, King knew what national media wanted. So therefore, King would not give them what they wanted. Go back and watch the interviews, how he answered the questions. So he would not condemn Malcolm X. Then, of course, when Malcolm went to Mecca, how all these changed. And so what we're talking about here is, again, being smart not to also fall for the bait. Because once you give them what they're looking for, now that whole thing takes off. Yeah. And that thing happens in cities. Yeah. It happens in the states. It happens in organizations. And then you have fractures in movements. Yeah. Now all of a sudden, when you get this really great organized thing, now all of a sudden, now it's disintegrated into multiple pieces. And the agenda now gets impacted because now it's splintered.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Solidarity.
Okay, I can't read the sign, bro. It's dark. Add. Thank you. All right, thank you. Easiest thing to do is send me a text. I don't have a text. I see that sign. I'm like, I thought it said 408. I'm like, you in the dark, bro. All right, Eddie's gonna answer the question. We have an ad. It's an ad. Oh, it's a commercial. I got you. All right. So Eddie, answer the question.
Absolutely.
Then we're gonna run this spot, and we'll be back. Go ahead, Eddie.
You're absolutely right, bro. Solidarities are made.
I don't know what phone y'all text to. I don't got it.
Solidarities are made. They're produced. They're not presumed. And so in that moment where the difference evidences itself,
Yeah,
we have to start doing the work of building solidarity.
that's right.
King, not only in relation to Malcolm, just really quickly, but think about the March Against Fear. Think about that march that led to Stokely saying, I'm not going to jail ever again. I'm not saying freedom, we're going to say Black Power. Think about what King did every single night with those young people. Sitting down, arguing, debating, wanting to understand
Privately.
Black Power.
Can't be not.
No, privately.
Not on flyers.
You know, exactly, trying to figure it out. And you see the result.
Well, when he went to Chicago,
Right.
when he went to the gangs on the west side of Chicago, he said, let's meet. And then when Andrew Young, they were like, what the hell's taking so long? They didn't realize he was with them for 4 or 5 hours and got them to back off and support what they were doing because he was willing to actually have a conversation, but he did it privately.
Exactly. So,
And there's a whole bunch of folk today don't know what the private conversation is. And yes, they will drag you publicly. They will go out there as opposed.
Be loud and wrong, though.
Huh?
And be loud and
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
so I know we got to go to the
No. So I'm gonna pick up on that when we come back because just so you set it up. Because what I'm trying to establish here is we're talking about an agenda. We have to deal with. You can't be, you can decorate the most unbelievable house, but if the house was built in a jacked up foundation, there will be cracks in the walls, and that house will be condemned because the foundation was never firm. And that's really what we're talking about here. Let's go to a commercial break. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, my name is Nasser Peydar, and I'm the Chancellor of IUPUI. For the past 6 years, IUPUI has been a proud title sponsor for the Steward Speakers series. We are in this together because we both believe in engaging the community in conversations that shape our society. Just like this speaker series, IUPUI makes a difference in people's lives. We educate and graduate thousands of students every year. In fact, this fall, 40% of beginning students at IUPUI are students of color. 40%, our highest percentage ever. We also partner with our neighbors on transformational projects like the historic renovation of the Madam Walker Legacy Center. We live in the heart of this community, and we are part of this community. IUPUI is excited to work hand in hand with the Steward Speaker Series to welcome thought leaders who raise awareness, advance knowledge, and enhance our community. Congratulations to Steward Speaker Series for more than 30 years of impact.
To my children, and the children of this city, to the overlooked and forgotten, to the lost and those never to be found, this is for all of you. I know things seem upside down. Every week births a new hashtag and a debate about humanity. There are a million voices screaming into the void, and you don't know which to hold on to. May these words comfort you and be a reminder that you are the treasure. Some people may weaponize your skin because they refuse to acknowledge your greatness. They will fear you and your strength because you are a mirror to their darkest secret and a key to a history they'd rather lock away. Know this. Soaked in your pores is a lineage of survival. A lineage that was carried across oceans, traversed through deserts, and crossed mountains. No matter if by choice, by force, or tasked with building an empire. Remember, the same sun that shone down on your ancestors warmed you as well. Your skin is not a weapon, but a reflection of the sun's reach of days past and days coming, a gift for you, the treasure. Some people will forget what it's like to be young. They'll place expectations on you that they don't adhere to themselves. They will lose sight of your humanity and try to deny you your right to exist. Some may even forget their oaths to protect and only serve those that look like them. Know this. Your mistakes and the mistakes of others do not determine who you will always be. Remember, you are more than mugshots and hashtags. You are more than a suspect and excuses used to profile. You are worthy of the joy that comes from learning from your mistakes. Mistakes that create opportunities for growth, especially for you, the treasured. Some will try to silence you as you speak out. They will try to burden you with teaching them about how they have harmed you. They will pretend history does not exist and turn the other cheek when it gets uncomfortable. Know this. In you lies the pulse of a movement started generations ago. Your words expand into the language of revolution, and silence has done nothing to create change. Remember to make sure that when you speak, you mean it. Let the words that cross your mouth speak the spirit of your soul, a call to the ancestors that see you for who you are, the treasured. Some will see you and do everything in their power to ensure that you do not suffer for their misdeeds. They will take it to the streets and to the State House to fight for you. They'll bring light to the shadows so you won't have to. They will exist to show you no matter your gender presentation or sexual orientation, you can have a life full of joy, love, and happiness. Know that you are not alone. And many of us are fighting to give you a life better than we could have ever dreamed. Know you are more than your ancestors' struggles, but also our wildest dreams. Remember that you deserve to find your passion, to know the beauty of feeling unconditional love, to find the ways you are soft, not just strong. In you lies the spirit of Drajon Reed and Breonna Taylor, Fannie Lou Hamer and Shirley Grisham, Bayard Rustin and Marsha P. Johnson. You are earth guardians and water protectors. You are the creators and innovators. In you marches the spirit of Stonewall and Standing Rock, Tiananmen Square, and those marching in Portland and Minneapolis. Standing with those fighting today and whose shoulders we all stand upon. From the backyards to the State House, from the schools to the hospitals, from cries on the street to the whispers at home, every day, the truth is taking a stand and finding its power. Things are changing. And they're changing for you because you are the gift of life renewed. You truly are the treasured.
When I look at, we talked about the point of the agenda. And one of the things I think that the biggest lesson I believe coming out of Black Lives Matter movement since the vertical George Zimmerman to where we are today is that folk really learned not everything happens in D.C. We now see a completely different focus on district attorneys.
Yep.
That was never a part of the conversation. They talked about mass incarceration, criminal justice reform is always about what laws Congress could pass, as opposed to going, well, wait a minute, if we change the DA, then all of a sudden, that's really, you don't even get to the court system before that. Yep. Today, I interviewed Aisha Brayboy, state's attorney in Prince George's County. She and Marilyn Mosby released their list of police officers who they will not call to the stand because they have significant issues. As DAs, they are saying these cops are so awful, they cannot testify in any cases. And what they're really saying is they need to be fired. That doesn't happen unless you're the power of the DA. And so just talk about how you've seen this shift in the last 10 years and now where we are, where people are really, really getting local, local, local. National still is important, but if you do not move on local, it doesn't matter what happens in D.C.
Well, I want to say a couple things to that. Yes, what the interventions that sector has been trying to make have felt like calling out in the wind and nobody's there to listen, right? For people who've been doing CJ reform work for a long time, folk were trying to bring people together to impact what they call system stakeholders, right? So how do we influence who the judge is? How do we influence who the DA is? How do we influence the decisions that are being made at every step when somebody is coming into contact with the criminal legal system? And folks were told that they were bananas for even trying to do that. Then there are these openings that allowed for more conversation about racial justice and criminal legal system reform that helped to lift those up. The reason that I tell the story from that perspective is because I think I don't want us to assume that that strategy came out the sky. It's just it didn't have the power of a movement behind it. Now, we talk a lot about national and local, and I think that this is a really deeply important point. So much of the things that we're trying to impact must be impacted locally. There's so many levers of power where we live. You don't really have to worry that much about what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are doing. For real, for real, for real. And I say that after almost a year of trying to get this administration to do stuff. Just do what you're doing here. Just do what you're doing here, because if you do it well here, they can't keep doing what they're doing over there. But the imbalance that we have right now, right, is that we haven't built state and local power that they feel accountable to. So that's why we vote, especially why we vote locally, and that's how we wield our power to have national impact. But I do think sometimes we have and create a false tension between national and local. They have to be in relationship to each other. One is not better than the other.
I call it connecting the dots.
Yes, one is not better than the other. You need to figure out at some point how it is that you govern for millions of people. You have to do that. If our movements are successful, we have to figure out how to deliver for millions of people. And we have to impact where we are too. And yes, there have always been these dynamic tensions between, local organizing and national organizing, because national organizing is seen as having more visibility, more power, more resources, and often that is true. But why would we shun that as opposed to try to figure out how to use it to our benefit and advantage? The reason that national organizations can get away with that kind of stuff is because we haven't built power locally.
But also the national organizations, they're actually not national organizations.
Well, some of them are.
Because without their
Yes.
chapter, right, but without the NAACP out of Baltimore ain't nothing without its 2,000 chapters.
Correct. But this is what I mean about nuance. We can figure out how to leverage all of those things. It doesn't have to be one or the other, is
Right.
my point. And if there are national organizations that aren't rooted locally, they are deeply vulnerable anyway. So don't spend a ton of time
Because they can't mobilize nobody.
hand-wringing about national organizations. Build your local work. Build your local work. And figure out how to leverage the platforms of national organizations who should already be in conversation with you anyway about how to do that.
See, Eddie, that was the brilliance of earlier Ella Baker, because her deal was where she and King always differed. She did not believe in parachuting in, take all the attention. Her training was, no, who are the people who are already doing the local work, and no, we're here to amplify you. And I think that where we are now, I don't care what the issue is, that's where people, I think, are struggling, because people who are in cities, and then you go cities, then you go neighborhoods, then you go neighborhoods, then you go blocks, then you go blocks and streets, houses, they go, we don't have any power. And you go, well, actually you do. Really what's needed, they need someone who can actually say, no, actually you do have power. I mean, so for me, because my parents were the founders of a civic club, my view of activism, my view of organization has been completely different, because the means were in our living room.
Yeah.
We had to go pass some damn flyers out because we were free labor. They had 5 kids. Okay? So I saw in real time, all right, we want to refurbish our parks. Okay, well, whose department is that? At the county, that's the city. We want to step up police patrols. Okay, well, who we talk to? The district commander, the city. So I saw that in real time, how they figure out the system. I really think, you said it earlier about education, I really think the greatest, most fundamental flaw that we have right now is folk don't know. They literally don't understand this system that we have. What the city does, the school district does, the water district does, the county does, what the state legislator does. They figure you got black folks who think that black member of Congress represents them, and they ain't even represent none of them. But it's just, well, they black, I'm black, Andre Carson gotta be mine. No, you live in this person's district. And so I think we gotta actually return back to those freedom schools of literally teaching people the fundamentals of politics and the systems to then know who the hell to go talk to when you need to do something.
This conversation is so good. Thank you in so many ways, because I think that when we think about the content of organizing, it's not only getting trained, learning the skills to do it, but to also get clear about the object of it, right? So part of what you're talking about is very clear to me, that a part of what organizing a community, organizing a constituency entails. But we can tell ourselves a story about how African-American politics shifted. But before I tell that story really quickly, I think we need to understand the local. Remember, I used the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Was not in one entity.
So it comes about because there are Wildcat student sit-ins all across the country. Happening in Nashville, happening in the AU Center, happening in Mississippi, happening across the country. And so what they're trying to figure out, what do we do? So then they go to Shaw, April 1st, 1960. And they organize, and they coordinate local efforts to have a national impact.
They are individual organizations that say, let's fall under an umbrella organization that provides national resources, but we still our own local organization.
Right. So in our current moment in the academy, we have a concept called the global. Because even the local is global. So there's a sense in which even the work that one is doing in one's local community, right, can easily be networked in a number of different ways to have a national impact. In other words, it can actually move from the bottom up as opposed from the top down. Now, why do I say that? Because there is a moment in our politics. I could tell the story, I can narrate it in this way and take it to the Gary, Indiana Convention in 1972, where folks are talking about creating the conditions to expand black elected officials, and then musing about running a black person for the presidency. Why? Because it would have an impact on black turnout. Then we would have black folk voting at higher numbers because we would have someone at the top of the ticket. Then that would lead to down ballot.
Except they did not want to support the sister they wanted to support, which is why she didn't go. I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
See, you stole my thunder, right? You knew what I was doing. And how Jesse takes that strategy in 84. And what happens from 84 to now is that DC becomes the golden calf. We run somebody for the national office. We create the energy down ballot. We think we're going to get a Doug Wilder. We think we're going to get a Dave Dinkins. We think we're going to get a Carol Moseley Braun. We think we're going to And so the energy has always been, since those days, national.
But Doug Wilder runs in 1992, and Reverend Jackson, to your point, comes out, is very critical of him because he feels as if he's too conservative, and then that actually stunts Doug Wilder's actual run, which is one of the reasons why most people don't even remember he actually ran for president. And so, but here's the thing that Jesse Jackson Jr. told me.
But do you agree with the story I just told you?
Yes, okay. But here's the deal, though. But one of the biggest mistakes that people came out of Gary is they chose the political route. They completely ignored the last 5 years of King, which was the economic focus. And so they said political is our route to the future, which it worked with Marion Barry, Coleman Young, Maynard Jackson, how they used political power to drive economics. But those mayors in the 80s and 90s forgot the economic piece and only focused on politics. You got to have the money and the politics. But the thing that Jesse Jr. said that Reverend Jackson failed to do, to your point about organization, he built this infrastructure, database, running in 84, 88, and didn't keep it.
Oh, my soul.
That, Jesse Jr., we sat down, he said, biggest mistake my dad made.
That's more than a mistake.
He said, we had the list in every state. We had the fundraisers. We had the organizers. What Reverend Jackson did not do was what, and as a reason Sanders did, Sanders supported Reverend 8488. Sanders runs, he takes that and shifts it into our revolution. That was the mistake. So all of that work, which goes back to the fundamental problem that we have, when we mobilize around an individual, we're not thinking what happens when the individual is no longer here.
That's right.
You created the institution that can survive without you.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Imagine where we would be,
I'm like,
politically, economically, if you had that engine. Because what people don't understand, I had to check Bill Bennett, we were on CNN, because this was in the 2008 election.
You used to do that a lot.
Well, you know, he would say stupid stuff a lot. He made this point. He said that Reverend Jackson winning South Carolina in 88 was black history. He actually said this on CNN. He said, but Obama winning South Carolina in 2008 was American history. And he was out of studio, and I was sitting, we were on air, and I was like, turn my mic on. Turn my mic on. So the production guy, he said, I think Roland wants to get in this conversation. And so they brought me in, and I just went right at him. And then he doubled down. Then I went, turn my mic back on. And I said, Bill, I'm not going to let you sit on national TV and somehow segregate history. I said, Richard Shelby does not become a United States Senator in Alabama without the 2 million people Reverend put on the rolls in 84 and 88. I said, there's a little white dude out of Minnesota who's a United States Senator named Paul Wellstone. I said, he was a state director for Reverend's campaign in Minnesota. I said, he ain't U.S. Senator unless Reverend runs. I said, there's a whole swath of black sheriffs and city council members and county commissioners who ran on his coattails. I said, you will not disrespect 84 and 88 run. He didn't triple down. He shut the hell up after that one. But it was that organizational piece, which, Alicia, that even with the work that y'all done with BLM, what you're doing now with Black Futures Lab, you're constantly making it clear this, don't make this about us, because if all of a sudden, because you're no longer with BLM, if a person moves on, the institution is still there. Unfortunately, too many of our organizations revolve around the personality of the individual, and when they die or when they leave town, it collapses, and now we got to restart and rebuild. So all of that work has to come over again, and it was wasted.
Well, that's what it means to build institutions and build infrastructure in our communities. And, you know, we had a rich conversation today about BLM. And, you know, I left in 2017. And BLM, the global network, the movement, is having a lot of political struggle that needs to be had. It needs to be had. And it doesn't need my way in. It doesn't need my say-so. I, of course, have opinions about what I think it should do. If we're going to tell the whole story, I never thought there should be chapters of BLM, right? But now that it's here, we have to have these political conversations.
But also explain to people, though, how that happened. Because what actually happened was a national, international thing that actually happened in reverse.
Well, it came out of the Freedom Ride to Ferguson, where we mobilized more than 500 not just organizers, doctors, teachers, lawyers, because folks on the ground were saying that they needed support. So Patrice and Darnell, and a ton of other people helped to organize. Black media, we had a ton of black journalists, black media. And coming out of that weekend that folks spent there, they were asking each other, what are we going to do when we get home? We don't need to keep coming to Ferguson. We got the same issues in our communities, so we should organize in our communities. And then folks started talking about, we want to be chapters of BLM. Now, this was a struggle that we had amongst the three of us. My position was, this is too much.
Right. But also,
It's
y'all
too much.
had no national organization.
No. It was
Yo.
literally a series of social media platforms.
Right.
And three people volunteering to connect people. I'm getting 60 emails a day from people wanting the same thing, and I am taking my time, even though I'm employed. I have other jobs. I'm taking my time connecting people. We're doing all of this behind
So
the
you
scenes.
had chapters
there is
that
no
were
infrastructure.
Chapters were created of something that actually didn't exist nationally.
Correct.
Which then caused y'all to go, damn, we better create this thing nationally
Like
because this thing is.
we literally had to build a plane while it flew. And then on top of that,
So when people were saying this Black Lives Matter chapter, y'all were like, okay, they're not actually with us because that's actually them, but they're called a Black Lives Matter chapter.
and then everybody starts calling themselves Black Lives Matter, whether they're with the global network or not.
And then they do something, then they say, Alicia, speak on this. You're like, I don't even know who the hell that is.
Well, right, because we have this tension, right? This dynamic tension where if there's no leaders, we can all be BLM. But then at the same time, when something happens, oh, I'm not them. Right? So like in 2016, there was a protest that got organized by DeRay McKesson and others in Louisiana. And a cop got a rock thrown at them. Well, because they had been running around saying that they were co-founders of Black Lives Matter, we got sued.
Yes.
I got served. Patrice got served. Opal got served.
A case with the Supreme Court.
Listen, we had to say, oh, no, excuse me. So I definitely wasn't there. I was at home on the couch with fibroids. And I know it because it was that same weekend that that big hit piece came out about tensions inside of Black Lives Matter. And you were calling me talking about, sis, you got to get on the thing. And I said, sis is not getting on anything. I am recovering from fibroid surgery, right? So this is the dynamic tension that happens inside of movements. And it's not new, right? It's not new. And the thing I want to say about this too, though, is for this movement to get stronger, it has to go through. And we have to protect it enough to be able to do that without undue infiltration, which has already happened.
Right.
Which has already happened. So I can't tell you how many stories there are out there about some helicopter pad that I must have from George Soros, who I've never met. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many stories are out there. And actually in this last year, poor Patrice has really gone through it.
Right.
Now, if y'all don't know the price of real estate in California,
You sure know
where
now.
I live,
Right.
and have to leave because I can't afford real estate in California, you know now. $1 million for a home is what homes go for in the hood. California is a hot market.
But the issue you have, which goes back to what you said earlier, to the people, oh, how dare you
Yes.
profiting off of the movement? How dare you? And then they go through that also, which King was very sensitive to, which is why he gave away the Nobel Peace Prize money. And his wife was not happy about that. Nor was Ralph Abernathy happy about it. There were issues there. And so then people go, and they also expect movement leaders to be broke. Reverend Jackson says all the time, ain't no 401k plan. There's no pension plan in civil rights activism. And see, the thing that, And if I step on your toes, deal with it, ain't my problem. One of the fundamental problems that we have is that we have people, Eddie, who have benefited from the movement who then don't want to turn around and fund the movement. You can't, Reverend Jackson says, I'm the tree shaker. Everybody else's job is to come scoop up what I shook. But if you don't turn around, fund the movement. I personally seen John Rogers at Rainbow Push on Saturday morning hand deliver his check. Because he knows that the work of Reverend Jackson on pension funds benefits Ariel. He says, we've got to fund that work. We got to fund it. People don't realize this, and I got a problem saying it, and I said it publicly. The Obama administration didn't lift a finger to help Ariel keep its the 401k plan for General Motors. They tried to. They went up the finger.
That was his board.
But, right, if you are black and you do not live in Chicago and you know about Obama when he ran for U.S. Senate, you likely were contacted by John Rogers. He was his first major fundraiser. They did not lift a finger to help in that situation. It was Reverend Jackson who called up Whitaker on a Friday and said, I will see you in your office at 9 a.m. tomorrow in Detroit. And John said, this is the fact. Because there was a run on money in 2009, people pulling their money out of these funds. If Ariel lost that contract, Ariel would have been out of business. It was Reverend Jackson that saved Ariel Capital. So Melody Hobson is the CEO today because Reverend saved that company because he understood the value of black ownership. But the point there, Eddie, that people in this room, people watching have to understand, if we do not fund our movement, we can't sit here and expect Alicia to be starving, not paying rent, and trying to figure out how in the hell they're going to be able to eat. There are people who have kids that are sending them to college, and folk had better understand that if they're writing books and giving speeches to live, how in the hell do you think they have time to do the work and you're sitting your ass at home benefiting off of their work?
And you create the conditions under which the temptation becomes even stronger. See, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we also have a challenge here where movement work is either concentrated in the nonprofit space or it's supposed to be volunteer. Now, I have never organized in any community where people expected you to not have stuff so that you could fight. Never, ever, 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 ever. And I don't understand where that narrative comes from. I don't think that we should get rich off movement work, but I don't think people should be struggling. I don't. And I don't think there's this thing that we do, and it's old, you're right, Roland, where we expect people to be martyrs.
King died broke.
Why?
Bob Moses just passed away, and he was struggling at the end of his life. He gave away his entire MacArthur, gave it all to the Algebra Project.
So listen, that's
And the Bob
something.
Moses walked away from the movement because he feared becoming a civil rights celebrity.
So, if we don't have these conversations, we're going to repeat the same stuff. I don't actually think it is a bad thing for people to have platforms. I don't think it's a bad thing for people to own homes. I don't. I think more people should. And the problem here is that rules of our society and our economy, they're rigged so that more people can't. The problem is not people who fight for us every day having a house. It's not. It's really not. So the other thing I just want to offer here, though, is it feels like we got smoke for the wrong people. I just read this report that came out. I want to say it was either the Washington Post or the Atlantic, where they tracked all the money that was raised over last year. some amount of billions of dollars was raised.
Corporations pledge anywhere from $30 to $50 billion. Black Lives Matter, when they released their numbers, the $90 million, if I was advising them, I would advise them not to do that, but they were talking about transparency. But I said this, and I have no problem with saying it, all of these people ripped BLM, $90 million. NAACP received in excess of $120 million.
Hello.
Folks didn't rip them. National Urban League received money. NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, all the groups did. BLM was the only one that released their numbers, and you saw what happened when they did.
Well, because
the attacks and all of those different things along those lines. See, once we start getting into the money part, Eddie, not just of the organizations, but also I'm going to talk about activism, how we have to also view this differently. Because I've had people sit here and mad, upset, well, how dare you go after these companies on black-owned advertising? I said, well, how in the hell do you think CNN got to be the size it is? I said, there's a reason you don't have a single black-owned media company that has more than 5 bureaus across the country. There's a reason you don't see reporters left and right. There is not a single black-owned media national correspondent that covers Congress. So we have people, and again, to understand money, how it understands. I sit here and say, you look at philanthropy, and that's really what a lot of these corporations are doing. So what they'll say, well, we're going to give $5-10 million. Here's the whole deal. I don't need y'all to give $5-10 million in philanthropy. What I need you to do is give 5% of your marketing budget to black-owned media. So you take Amazon, okay, you take PepsiCo, you take all these companies. I had Mark Morial on the show, and I said, we were talking about the State of Black America report, and one of them dealt with economics, and I said, well, Mark, here's an example. I said, and I support what PepsiCo is doing with the National Urban League. $10 million in grants over 5 years. I support. I said, PepsiCo wants to drive $100 million in receipts to black-owned restaurants over 5 years. I said, totally support. I said, but PepsiCo spends $3 billion a year on advertising. If 5% of that went to black-owned media would receive $150 million a year, which is $750 million over 5 years. Y'all getting $10 million over 5. They want to drive $100 million in receipts over 5. Black-owned media could get $750 million over 5. I said, which pot is the one we should be fighting for? But see, that's also activism. So I want the people to understand what you do in academia. You still deal with activism. Speak to folk, get them to understand that activism is not just solely what Alicia and others do, that it's also in your particular space. You can be activist in that's benefiting African Americans.
Absolutely. I want to just lift up what Alicia has said and what you just kind of expanded on. When we look at the money and who donated the money and how it shaped the voice of those organizations, what they chose to speak out against and what they chose not to speak out against.
And what they're not speaking out on right now.
right this minute.
Right this minute. The very way in which they're advocating for voting rights and the quiet around Fight for 15. And we can go down. So tracing
Or policing.
Police, we can go down the line, right? I mean, I have a whole thing I could just run on the NAACP, but we're not going to do that right now. Right? But I think it's really important. And I think this is really important.
I told y'all to buckle up. I told y'all.
And I'm not saying that to single out the NAACP. In a way, what I'm saying is that I'm trying to echo your point that why are we focusing on this particular? And I would add a footnote to what you're saying about BLM, that this had to happen. Ideological differentiation had to happen. You got some folks who call themselves Black Lives Matter activists, and they're in the jungles of Brazil studying communism. While others are trying to figure out how they're going to move to D.C. to become a part of the Hillary Clinton administration.
And then you got some Black Lives Matter Black Lives Matter activists who are in New York City.
Leading
who
anti-vaccine protests.
Anti-vaccine protests, and who also have significant issues when it comes to domestic violence. But go right ahead.
But that's the whole point. All of that's going to play itself out.
And sexual assault.
And sexual assault.
We'll come back around to that.
And the historical,
I ain't afraid to call them
and
out.
the historical precedent Look at what happened to the Black Panther Party.
I mean,
But think about the Black Panther Party.
Yes.
Think about what happened once Huey gets locked up, and how many the exponential expansion of the party, and what happened when he came out and saw it.
yeah, it wasn't just the war wasn't just the white police forces. They mobilized us against each other and won.
And what? So there's historical precedent to what we're seeing. In my own space, right? Having African American studies at an Ivy League school, and I say this with clear understanding of how complicated it is. African American studies at an Ivy League school isn't just a typical department, because it becomes an institutional space for Black America. So what African American studies means at a Princeton or at a Harvard, it means that we have access to resources, to leverage, that we then have to then disperse. So no one knows that we convened, the SNCC Legacy Board. When Bob Moses was spending a year with us, and we invited all of the folks, and it was at Stanhope Hall that they figured out how they were going to organize the SNCC Legacy Board and what they were going to do. No one really knows that the Black Youth Project 100 had its first national organizing meeting at Princeton, where that money is in those sorts of ways. So part of what I'm trying to answer your question is, what does it mean to be in these positions, to have access to those resources that are coming to you, and how then do you leverage those resources to further the work that's happening in these local spaces? Because if we're only doing it, right, to have our version of the NAACP Image Award, I'm not throwing shade on my boy Skip, then we're not really doing the work,
And
right?
not the Image Awards.
Right.
Yeah,
But
I
that-
feel
not
like
the
that,
Image
but I don't want to do an Image Award.
No, but actually, first of all, we got too many damn awards programs. I'm just across the board. If I see another damn awards program, I'll cut somebody out. No, seriously, because again, what they actually become are corporate awards programs. Those who give the longest speeches at the awards program. Let's just be honest about it. But what we're talking about is, how do you, first of all, you keep your consciousness. It comes with you. No matter what spaces you're in, you're leveraging it. Look, I dare say, the most powerful Black presidential aide ever was not Louis Martin, it was Bob Brown under Nixon.
Yeah.
It was Bob Brown who had no portfolio, but Nixon literally gave him the power. And folks who don't know, his book is amazing. I did an interview with him, go to our YouTube channel. But Bob Brown was the secret weapon of MLK and SCLC. But Bob Brown was like, I'm a Black man from North Carolina. Yeah, I'm working for this Republican, but while I'm here, I'm about to leverage the hell out of this, which is what Omarosa didn't do, which is what the brother Duran didn't do, and I called out because I'm doing, dude, you're there, but how are you leveraging it? And I think that there's a strain in our community where we have folk who never sat at the table of power, don't know what real power is, and are so distrustful of, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? I might have people saying, Roland, I see you running these ads. They're going to change your content. I said, fool, I own it. What are you talking about? No, what are you talking about? I own it. Well, they're going to control the show. I'm like, no, I own it. And it's hard for a lot of us, and that's the piece I think where we have to be at, pushing our people to stop being afraid that if we grow and get bigger, man, the white man gonna take over. No, trust the integrity and the character of the leadership, that they're doing it for the right reasons, and judge them accordingly on the actions, the work.
Well, and also, folk have to be in relationship.
I love that formula.
So part of what's hard is that we have a movement that is deeply, deeply decentralized. So lots of folk don't know each other. To be able to know
That's somebody's phone.
Okay.
Go ahead.
To be able to
We
know.
got 5 minutes. I see you. I see you. I got you.
So to be able to know who leadership is and isn't,
And they don't talk.
and people don't.
I
bring-
call Alicia all the time.
Yeah, he does.
Like when she on TV and her lighting was jacked up.
He always tells this story. I'm
He'll
sorry.
text you at 5,
Or,
6 o'clock in the morning.
no. I need y'all to understand. No, I need y'all to understand
Nobody helped
how
me.
huge that point is. When you communicate with people and you're legitimate and it's coming from the right place, folk receive it differently. I saw Alicia on TV. I was like, Alicia, damn, the light was all in your eyes.
It's true. I look
She
like an
does
owl.
not do television. Alicia, raise your lighting above your eye line, point it down, then we won't see it in your glasses. We still get you. She's like, well, damn. So we on the phone. I'm like, now run that Ethernet cable
Yeah,
from the
you did.
room
You did.
in
My
here,
whole
get a
spot.
I went through the whole
Yes,
deal.
you did.
Y'all think Eddie was on MSNBC.
Live.
And Eddie, not realizing, because it is a verbal tick that he got from the college students, I'm trying to tell y'all, well, he said right 14 times. I was counting.
I see
I'm
what
driving to work. I went,
do it too.
Eddie, did you realize that you said right 14 times in your last conversation? He's like, you serious? I'm like, I'm serious. But again, not knowing, now here's the deal. I'm not hating like, why in the hell Eddie on Morning Joe? He's on there, but I'm listening. And so, but the fact that I could reach you, communicate, that's valuable. So when something does happen or we hear something,
Yeah.
say,
No, it happened. Remember when the story came out about
HBCUs.
and I read the story.
Associated Press, Newsweek, 45 billion being cut. It was all a lie. They completely misread the story. Black people ran with it.
I texted because I got my platform. I retweeted it. I get hit. I text you. Oh, listen to this.
I said, take that
Take
down. That
it
ain't
wasn't
true.
source. Blah, 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 blah. I took it down. I apologized. Da, da, da. Communication.
Right.
Being in relationship.
That
Right.
being in relationship. And learning how to bring each other's hurts to each other. So,
Y'all heard that?
Because we can't talk to everybody.
no, look. My phone number has been the same for 20 years. Literally, I've had the same number. I switched networks, but I got the same phone number. And lots of people have it. You can use it. But also, let's practice doing that more often before we put it on Twitter or Facebook. Or just be honest about what we're trying to do.
Right.
Because sometimes people don't actually want to resolve it. They want to pop off. And that's okay, but just be honest about that. I'm not trying to resolve this with you. What I'm trying to do is actually take you out. Just
Because
say that.
they're jealous of the space.
Whether they're jealous or not.
I mean,
Just say that. But when we do
Yep.
this thing where we're like, everybody's got to be accountable, I'm like, I can't be accountable to people I don't know.
Right. Right.
I'm accountable in a community to my neighbors, my family, the people I organize with, but if I don't know you, I can't be accountable to you, and you're not accountable to me.
Right.
You're not running down all your stuff for me.
I love what somebody tell you, why you post this? I don't tell you what the hell to post on your page.
It's so interesting.
I don't even follow you.
I just say all this because I don't want to do a thing where we're talking about everything that people are doing wrong, but sometimes things need to just be said explicitly because we don't do that. So my thing is, if I say something that you don't like, you call me. You don't start tweeting about how
Right.
you didn't like what I said, knowing good and damn well you could just text me.
Well, I love the subtweet. See, I tag everybody. If
I'm
I
subtweeter,
talk about if I talk about you, I'm gonna put your handle on it. Like I don't subtweet. I don't.
It's true. But let me just say this last thing and then I'll be quiet. I really am focused lately on two things. One, the war that is being waged against how successful this movement has been. It's actually really serious, and I want all of us to take it really seriously, because this level of misinformation and disinformation, there's not deflection. It's literally strategy.
Yep, yep.
It's literally strategy.
Because they know what the next 10 years is going to look like.
Yes, and we air all of our stuff with no intention of zipping it up and moving it forward. And so we just give it as fuel. We give it as fuel, and then the consequences of that are we're left deeply vulnerable. Deeply vulnerable. When the FBI comes to my house and says my name was found on an envelope in the home of a white supremacist who was trying to take out other elected officials in Idaho, he was part of a Aryan Nation network, they still prosecuting this man, and it turns out it wasn't just him, it was 8 other people.
The dude out of Florida who sent the pipe bombs to CNN, and Van Jones' name was on one of those. My name was on his computer too.
See,
So the FBI called me too.
like, we literally leave people vulnerable because we have doubts.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure, because where did the money go? Is you serious right now?
Right. But the FBI didn't come to your house.
But also, is you serious right now? BLM did a whole annual report.
Right.
Not only put the numbers out, but put out where it was spent through the PAC, the global network, and the grassroots. Is you serious right now? People are out here getting targeted.
Yep.
And attacked.
Yep.
And we are leaving people vulnerable,
Yep.
and we are leaving our movements vulnerable, but we still put that sign in our window.
Right.
So I want to wrap this up then also by saying my hope for us, and not just movements, but I think in this era where we have been so deeply traumatized by the acceleration of the decline of our society, plus the rise of fascism, which is here,
Yep.
here,
Yep.
we are holding a lot. Grief, rage, trauma, and we have no tools. We have no tools. And if the last 10 years has taught us anything, it's that we need to get literate in that in the same way we're literate in campaigns
Yep.
and voting, right? We need to get literate in how do we take care of each other?
I said, I own it. I don't answer to anybody. That's also why we are building black-owned media, because when we don't control the narrative, they control the storyline.
That's shame.
Put your hands together for Alicia Garza.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You have a commercial, right?
We will have a commercial, but first, before we go to commercial, I want to make sure that I thank you all again. Dr. Glaude, Alicia Garza, Roland Martin, you guys are treasures in our community, and we are truly grateful for the conversation.
And give it up for Steward Speakers for doing this every single year, because they don't have to do this. Y'all stand up, stand up, stand up. Where your brother? Stand up, stand up. There you go. Give it up for them, y'all.
I hope one of the important things for us is that we walk away with takeaways. And so as you have seen the work of Steward Speakers for the last 36 years, I also hope that you see the growth as we move in the direction of really putting activism to action. One of the things that Steward Speakers has had a motto for years is we're more than just talk. And this year you'll notice that we're being intentional about our education. We talked about literacy and being literate in civic engagement and understanding where and how to affect change. It is important that to us that as we continue this work and we continue the talk, that we also educate our youth. We educate them at the K through 12 level. We educate them on a collegiate level so that they understand that the conversations that we engage in, like this, from leaders like you, that they can take it, activate it, and use it to make a difference. And we hope that you'll join us. There are several ways that you can be a part of Steward Speakers. We hope that you will go online and that you will volunteer. If you have not already done so, please check out the website. I also want to take the time to really acknowledge our sponsors, because if it not be for them, we would not be here. Thank you. IUPUI, CICF, you guys have been amazing. CICF did an amazing job this morning with their workshop. Thank you so much for allowing us to have a candid conversation. We appreciate you. Thank you. To the rest of you, the next event that we have coming up is November the 5th. If you've not already gotten your season ticket, please do so. We have a short video to show you what's to come, but until next time, we hope to see you there. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.
The truth of the matter is, my brothers and sisters, you cannot talk about labor rights and not talk about civil rights. You can't talk about racial justice and not talk about economic injustice as well.